Welcome to Pulse. Positive actions, uplifting lives, sparking excellence. This is more than a podcast. It's a movement. A space where purpose meets practice, where leadership meets life. Here, we believe in three things: listen, learn, lead. Because before you can lead anybody, you have to listen. Before you can change anything, you have to learn. And when you've done both, now you're ready to lead. I'm your host, Paul D. Taylor Sr. And here, we don't just talk about success, we talk about how to build it. We don't just highlight problems, we develop solutions. Every episode, we bring you voices that matter, stories that inspire, strategies that work, and principles that transform lives. Because at the end of the day, it's not about where you started, it's about how you move forward. So lean in, listen, learn, lead. Get ready to take your pulse. Let's grow. Welcome to the Paulse Podcast. Positive actions, uplifting lives, sparking excellence. Before we get started with today's episode, we want to give a special thanks to our friends here at the district in beautiful downtown Ponchatoula, 100 West Pine Street, Ponchatoula, Louisiana. They have a great array on their menu, a great lineup on their menu. My favorite here would be the shrimp and grits. They have a phenomenal shrimp and grits over here. The chicken wings are amazing. So just over here at 100 West Pine Street, Ponchatoula, Louisiana. If you're ever in the area, be sure to stop by and check them out. They have a great atmosphere. The ambiance is wonderful, great food. They are a wonderful place for the community and for the family together. So you can visit them online at www.thedistrictponchatoula.com and be sure to follow them on Facebook at The District Ponchatoula to see their latest menu items and events. If you want to give them a call, their number is 985-467-0079. That's 985-467-0079. So we want to thank them again to allow us to record here and for supporting the Pulse movement. Now, let's get into today's conversation. So it has been said that cleanliness is next to godliness, and for a long time people thought that was in the Bible. But I can tell you that saying, this man epitomizes that saying, cleanliness is next to godliness. He has taken that to another level. He is an entrepreneur. He's definitely a godly man. He is a two-time state championship, state of Louisiana, baseball winning coach at Ascension Catholic High School. He also was assistant coach on the football team at Ascension Catholic when they won a state championship. He is an entrepreneur, a coach, philanthropist. He is the owner of the largest Janet King franchise in the world. And that's kind of hard for me to fathom right now because you're from Lutcher.
I'm from Gramercy, Lutcher.
You say Lutcher? I'm from Lutcher. So two Lutcher boys are here in Ponchatoula, and you know, we are the bonfire capital of the world. I know everybody think that is Garyville, but it's not.
It's not.
Because all they do is make a little crocodile, alligator, or something.
Just build one.
They build one. We build hundreds.
That's right.
Of miles and miles on Christmas Eve. Come on down to St. James Parish to check us out at the bonfires. Right. But, you know, we both two Lutcher boys and largest Janet King franchise in the world. Two-time Louisiana State Championship baseball coach. Assistant football coach and state championship winner there. Author of a powerful book called Victory's Shadow. We're going to talk about that book in a little bit, but this is Coach Carey Ourso.
Yes, sir.
Welcome to the podcast, Coach.
Thank you for having me.
So what we like to get started off with is we do what's called checking your pulse.
All right.
So we do a quick round of three quick questions just to kind of warm up our guests so that they can get their pipes
Sure.
going, get the juices flowing. All right. So the first question is, what motivates you to lead every day?
Yeah, I was telling you earlier, entrepreneurship is tough. Like, there's ups and downs, there's peaks and valleys, and you just got to get up every morning, just ready to go and like, put on that positive attitude. Somebody said to me once, like, you got a foreman on each side of your head, and they got a whole bunch of workers behind them, and one's the positive foreman and one's the negative foreman, and you choose which one of those you put in the work each day. And so I just try to choose the positive foreman and get those people rolling and working in the right direction.
Yeah, that sounds like the old cartoons, Tom and Jerry, when they had the devil on one shoulder and the angel on
Yeah,
the other shoulder, motivating
that's right.
to either go the good way or the bad way. And it sounds like you wake up every morning ready to listen at that angel on the good shoulder to go the good way. Second question, when things get hard, and we're gonna talk a little bit about that later because we know things got hard in life. What keeps you grounded?
Yeah, I think it's more my faith in God, to know that the things that I accomplish in business and I've accomplished in life is way more than about me. Like, I'm just not that good. Like, I'm from Lutcher, Louisiana. I got a general studies degree from Nicholls State University, aka Harvard on the Bayou, right?
Yep, I'm from Harvard on the
So
Bayou
like,
as well. Yeah.
so like, yeah, it's a lot in common. So it's kind of like I just know who I am and what my capabilities are. And I also understand that there's someone bigger and more powerful than me really driving this train or this ship. And I'm just kind of on it for the ride. So I'm able to dig deep into that.
Good, good, good. All right, our third question. When people look back on your life, what do you hope they say about your legacy that you're leaving behind?
Yeah, I hope that they look back and go like, he was a people person. He was a giver, more than he was a receiver. That he wanted to see the people that were along for the ride with him. He wanted to see them win, and he promoted their well being, and then ultimately that I was a good servant. That whether it was a servant to my customers or my people or my team or my community or my God, that ultimately that I was a good and faithful servant.
So, Coach, it seems like you're not without adversity, but it seems like triumph follows you. It seems like victory follows you. Like you win, and kind of like John Maxwell said one time. I had heard one of his podcasts when he said, "Winning is an inside job."
Yeah.
Tell me what's on the inside of you and what makes you keep going until you win.
Yeah, I think it was Mike Tyson that said everybody's got a plan till you get hit in the mouth, right? And you got a plan till you get hit in the mouth and you fall on the ground.
Mm.
And then it's about getting back up. And I think that maybe in my my athletic career and my coaching career, that we know that you don't always win. If you're a coach long enough, you're gonna win some, you're gonna lose some. Some get rained out, but ultimately you got to get back up. And I think throughout my athletic career, my coaching career, I learned that you have to get back up. And I always said to my kids, and then they threw this back on me one day. So you got to kind of watch what you teach them.
Yeah.
I always would say, like, when they would get hit by a pitch or something, I'd walk out to home plate and I'd say, "Get up, you're not hurt. Get up, you're not hurt."
Yeah.
Like, it was promoting, get back up, get back up. And it kind of became second nature to me. And then, like, when real tragedy hit, forget about business and all that stuff. When real life tragedy hits, it's the same thing. It's about trying to figure out how to get back up. And I think that the people who get back up the most are the ones that succeed. Like, people only see the successful person, but they don't see that person that had to get back up and failed and got back up and failed. I think most of the time is maybe that we just try a little harder. Maybe we take a few more chances so more things work out for us.
Yeah. I was looking at a documentary about forest fires and how tragic it is, the devastation that happens when fire sweeps the land. But
the point of a forest fire really is it gets rid of all of that underbrush and, the dead leaves and stuff that's accumulated over the years. But after all of that stuff is burned away, not long after, you start to see new growth, things growing new. And it sounds like that's what you're talking about, being resilient. Though you may see your city in ruins, just as New Orleans said after Katrina, we will rebuild. And I think that's a great thing, a great mindset to have, a great attitude to have. I tell my students all the time, you want to be a thermostat. You don't want to be a thermometer.
Right.
A thermometer changes with the ambient temperature, but a thermostat has a mindset. And it sounds to me like Coach Carey Ourso has a mindset that no matter what comes my way, I'm going to win.
Yeah, and I just feel like that, again, I go back to there's someone bigger in control of this than me. And when you know and you believe that you really have that on your side, like you just can survive because you know there's something else coming. And I wasn't always that way, right? Like my faith has grown throughout the years, not because it's been easy, but because it's been really tested. And I think God just, like, he looked at me and kind of went like, I'm going to really have to show this guy something because, like, he wants something concrete. And fortunately, he's done that a handful of times for me. So now I can really go back and go like, I got to be patient. I got to be obedient because something good is coming out of this.
Yeah, there's a scripture that says tribulation works patience and patience experience. And, I often see a lot of times people, they want the patience, but they can't endure the trials that it takes to build the patience.
But they want it right now.
Yeah, they want it right now.
That was me that day.
We live in a time and an era where everyone has that microwave mentality, and we're getting somewhere with this because I think it's important for us to know what's on the inside, your faith, the tragedy that you faced in your life, all of these things that's happened to you, created and built that resilience so that you can weather those storms, so that you can eventually last to see the triumph.
Yeah.
So I think that it's important that we really examine ourselves and examine what it is that we're thinking, how we're thinking that, again, we gotta go through those trials, we gotta go through those tribulations in order to build that experience that we can stand on down the road, so that we can stand that victory when it does come. Because if you win every time, if you never lose, if you never get knocked down, then what we're dealing with pride and arrogance and it's me. But I hear a very successful entrepreneur saying to me that it's someone bigger than me, someone greater than me that gives me my strength.
Yeah, and sometimes we just got to get through the tragedies to receive the blessings, right? Because there's and when you're in the tragedy, like, you just really can't picture what that blessing could be. I remember going through my divorce, and it was someone I was truly in love with, and she left, and like I couldn't see past it, and I sat with my pastor, and he said, God's got someone better for you, and I went, I don't see that. Like, how could it be someone better? And then before I knew it, Linda walked into my life, and she was like an angel into my life. And I was like, that's one of the things I was talking about when I said God had to show me some things, right?
Yeah.
My pastor, talked to me about, like, there's going to be something better for you. God's got a plan for you. And boom.
I think sometimes people, we discount someone going through a divorce because we see it so often. But divorce is basically, it's a death.
It's worse.
Because the person is still alive out there somewhere.
And people say, how do you know that? Because I've been through 2 deaths of spouses. Like, so I've been through 2 deaths. I've been through a divorce. And the divorce was worse.
Wow.
And like, so yeah, but again, it goes back to like, you gotta find the blessings within the tragedy. And sometimes you have to look for those blessings. Sometimes they don't just appear.
Not obvious.
You've got to search for, well, what was this about? Why did I go through this? And when you start looking for the blessings, instead of getting caught in the tragedy and the why me's and feeling sorry for yourself and questioning God about why did this happen to me? Because there's not always a good answer.
No.
Not one that we can understand anyway, right?
No.
And it takes you down a rabbit hole that's really, really a dark place. I did that. That's how I know it.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't do that anymore.
Right.
I didn't do that in my last tragedy that I wrote about.
Mm-hmm.
I know God's got a plan because he's revealed it for me already outside of other tragedies.
Yes. So, a name comes to mind as you saying that, Job. God says, have you considered my servant Job?
I just finished reading about Job.
Job was doing his thing. He was a righteous man. He was doing well, doing good. And the devil walked to and fro, and God asked him, where you been? He said, well, I've been to and fro. And God just volunteered, have you considered my servant Job? So we asked, why me?
Right.
And Job even asked, why me? And God had said, well, where were you when I hang the stars in the sky?
Yeah.
You don't get to ask God why.
That's right.
And then on top of that, he gave him double for his trouble.
That's right.
Yeah, everything that he lost, he restored it and then some. And I think that, we miss out a lot of times because we fall because, like you said, we're looking at what we're losing at the time, but we don't see beyond the tragedy, and just knowing that, hey, if we have faith, as you talked about earlier, we have faith that God is with us. If God is for us, who can be against us, right? If we have faith that God is with us, then we shouldn't flinch when things happen. Yes, you're going to hurt. The divorce was worse than 2 deaths. We're going to talk about that a little bit. But when we deal with those things, he is the one who gets us through those things. Mm-hmm. So let's talk about, all right, we talked about the divorce a little bit. It's worse than the deaths. Let's talk about the first one.
Yeah.
What went on with that?
Yeah. So she was the mother of my kids. There was some drug abuse going on that resulted from an injury. We were separated at the time. Trying to get back together. Love the lady. She was the mother of my kids. We'd been married 20-something years. We're working on getting back together. I'm thinking that, she's clean and everything. And then one day they find her dead.
Wow.
So it happened. I guess it didn't happen fast, but the death hit pretty quick. So there we are, at the time, my faith is my faith. Like it's a secondary thing in my life, and you call on it when you need it, and you put it on the side when you don't.
Like a credit card.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm gonna use my card now, but we survived it because family. Family, friends, everybody rallied around, and I just got in survival mode. Like I got these 3 kids. Yeah, they're high school and above. But still, when this happens, you're trying to wrap your arms around everybody. And I think we kind of all did that for each other. And we survived it and got past it.
What did you learn about yourself through that first ordeal?
Yeah, I don't really know. Like, I don't think I started learning about myself in that tragedy. I think it was just, we got to survive.
Just surviving.
Got in, not going, I don't acknowledge that it happened or trying to throw it so far on the back burner, just trying to survive and get through it. And I don't think I was in a place at that time that I was learning a lot about who I was. I just got in the win-loss mode of a coach.
Yeah.
And tried to rally the troops, which was my family.
Yeah.
And be strong for them. And they were strong for me, so we were able to get through it.
Right. So tell us about the second tragedy after the first death.
Yeah. So come out of that death, meet someone, eventually fell in love with her. We were together about 7 years, got married. We were together, I guess, married about 1.5 years or so. Come back from fishing. I think everything's great. We're building the business is building, and we're traveling a little bit. We got a little bit extra money. We got a little bit extra time. I think everything's great. I come back from a fishing trip on the weekend, and she's gone, and all that's left is a note. So now, like, huge shocker. Can't communicate. Her phone's off. Can't find her. None of our friends will say where she is. And here I am, like, crushed, because it's not just a loss. That person's still alive, and you don't even know where they are. Took me about 3 weeks to find her. Found her. We started working some things out. Got back, went to counseling, got back together, put it all back together. And 1 year later, she did the same thing when I was on a business trip.
Wow.
So now, between the two times that she left, I started building my faith. And let me just tell you, it was out of desperation. I don't want to make this sound like this guy just found God. Like, I was in trouble emotionally, trouble mentally, and I said, I got to find a church. And I got in the car one Sunday morning and drove to a church I'd never been to, which, by the way, is called Healing Place by Hurting World off of Highland Road in Baton Rouge. And I walked in not knowing anyone to this huge church. A gentleman saw me sitting down crying, walked up to me, asked me what was wrong. I told him, and he said, I got somebody you got to meet. And he said, I'm going to bring you to our men's pastor. And he introduced me to a pastor that I'd never seen a pastor look like that before. He was a young guy, short, stocky, but full of tattoos from head to foot. And I went, and he went, this is Chris. And I shook his hand, and he said, you want to come in and talk? And we did. And it's probably one of the most important people that I've ever met in my life, because not only did they guide me through the tragedy, he guided me towards God, and got me to see the importance of my relationship with God. So one of the chapters in the book is my church, my pastor, my therapist.
Yes.
And I actually met my therapist about a week later, because I was, again, trying to find someone to help. Googled therapist near me, and this guy pops up, and I choose him, and he was a godsend. He was also a spiritual person. He actually was in a seminary for a while. Crazy part, he also was a baseball guy. He actually played at Auburn. He was on Bo Jackson's team.
Wow.
And he actually out-hit Bo Jackson his freshman year.
Yes.
And he brought me the stats to show me. So it was this crazy connection that really worked. So I continue to see him. I'm continuing to meet with Chris, doing all these things, getting involved in some men's group. And so during that time between the first time she left and the second time, I had started preparing myself emotionally and spiritually and mentally, not for her to leave again, just I was more of a spiritual and leaned on my faith and developed my faith some. So when she left the second time, it was a tragedy, obviously, because I definitely wasn't expecting it again. But I think what really transformed everything was that at that point, before I prayed for her to come back the first time she had left, and God gave her back to me. But the second time she left, I prayed for God to tell me what he wanted me to do. I surrendered, basically. And that wasn't a trait of mine. Like, I'm a guy that wants to fix things, right? Like most men are. So, but I surrendered and said, hey, if you want her to come back, tell me to go find her and go get her. But if you need me to let her go, I'm willing to do that also. But take me where you're fixing to take me. And I think when I relinquished that control, some peace came upon me. We ended up not getting back together. And that's when Chris, my pastor, at lunch one day said, God's got somebody, he's got more plans for you. Like, this is not it. He's got someone better for you. And it's hard for me to buy. And, and then he kind of said, listen, you're going to have to forgive her and you're going to have to pray for him. And I'm going to just tell, I can't even say what I said, but I didn't think that was possible.
Wow.
And I can tell you today, I've forgiven her and I pray for her. Hopefully she does the same thing for me.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
But I don't control that. And then when I was able to do that, I found Linda, popped into my life, which has been the biggest blessing of all, right, to date at the time. So that would take us to the next chapter of my life, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. So Coach, we've talked about the tragedies that's happened in your life.
The first two.
But it's one thing, when you have a breakup or a divorce, even a death in the family. But talk to me about the one that really hit home, the brain bleed.
Yeah. So Linda and I are together. I met her. We're moving through life. We get married. We get married in December of 24. We've been together about, I guess, a year and a half. And I mean, life is wonderful, right? Like, we got time, we got money, we're traveling, we're living life.
That's
like
the American dream.
I'm not in the office, but a couple of days a month. My kids are running a business. Like, it is exactly where everyone wants to be. And not only is it where you want to be, I was with the right person.
Right.
Because you can have all these things, you can have time and you can have money, but if you don't have the right person to spend it with or share it with or spend it on,
right.
And I just had all of that, right? So, like, I'm on the top of the mountain.
Yeah.
Life is great. Linda's faith is big, so we're able to share our faith, and we're going to church together, and we're building Ourso University at the time, which is getting out and helping people. We just come back from a huge seminar in Augusta, Georgia that I spoke at. I think there was like 300 people. We booked some people into our classes, and we're 3 days away from leaving to go teach the first class for Ourso University, which ironically just happened this past Friday, and this was May of 24.
Wow.
Okay. So I wake up one morning, got this really bad headache like I've never experienced before. My neck's tight, my back, my shoulders are tight, my back's tight. And like, I know something's not right. And she's in the shower, but she's a retired nurse. So I get her out of the shower and I'm telling her about it. She's wanting to get me to the ER. And men, we're not all about going to sit in the ER. And I was like, let me rub some of this stuff on it. Let me take a shower. I got to
rub some of what stuff on it, Coach? What you
I got a meeting with Janet King and Ponchatoula I got to get to, which was ironically in this building upstairs at the time. And so I take a shower, I'm feeling a little better. She's like, I'm going to drive you. Like, you're not driving yourself. She hurries up, gets dressed. She's going to drive me here. We get out the subdivision a couple blocks and the headache hits me again. Worse this time. And she says, we're going to the ER. So she turns around, ER is right down the street from where we live. We go, long story short, they say, they CAT scan me. You got an aneurysm. It's bleeding. And either we got to find a bed at the lake for you in Baton Rouge, or we're going to have to air med you to Houston where they can do surgery. So I'm like, all right, whatever one we got to do, works. They're giving me some pain meds, so I'm not quite in as much pain. Or they come back in and they go, we got a bed in Baton Rouge. Ambulances, we're fixing to load you up. So they load me in the ambulance. My wife jumps in the back. They got me all hooked up. I'm having these headaches. And so the ambulance starts going, and I said, I need my cell phone. And she's like, no, you don't need a cell phone. Like, you need the nurse kicked in, right?
Mm-hmm.
You need to lay back. You need to be quiet. You need to let them take care of you. And I said, I need my phone. I got some calls I got to make. And she says, who you got to call? Like, she's vetting me before she's going to give me the phone, right?
Yeah.
And I said, I got to call my kids. Like, I don't know if I'm going to live. So she gives me the phone, and I call each one of my kids and, have that talk with them, tell them where I'm headed. And she goes to get the phone back, and I said, hold on, I got another call I got to make. She goes, who you got to call now? And I said, I got to call my attorney. She goes, for what? And I said, because I never finished writing the will, and I need to finish it. So I get him on the phone, and he says, I can't write it. Like, you got to finish writing it and actually sign it. And I'm laying down on the back of this ambulance, and I'm like, give me a piece of paper and a pen. Like, she gives me the back of an envelope. So we tear the envelope open. I'm writing things on the back. I sign it, give it to her, hang up. And she says, give me the phone and relax. I said, I got one more call I got to make. And she goes, who is this one to? And I said, I got to call Chris, which was my pastor. And so she lets me keep the phone. And Chris picks up. I briefly explain where I'm at and what's going on. Immediately, Chris says, can I pray for you? And I always would call Chris when I needed some prayer, because I joked with Chris that he had a direct line to God.
Yeah.
And like, my line was kind of fuzzy, like a bad phone signal, right?
Yeah.
And so he says, first I say, I need to know if I'm okay with God. Like, I don't know if I'm gonna make it. And he goes, man, look, you okay with God? I know where your heart is. He knows where your heart is. And then he says, can I pray for you? And I said, yes. Well, he prays, and through, this is not like a 10-second prayer, but ultimately in the prayer, he specifically says, and he's asking God to stop the bleeding. Well, we hang up. She takes the phone from me. No more phone calls. We get to Baton Rouge. We pull in. They bring me into the ER. They run me into the CAT scan. Come back, put us in a room. The doctor comes in, and he goes, the good news is we don't see no aneurysm no more, and there ain't no more bleeding.
Wow.
He says, the bad news is there's a lot of blood puddled up in the back of your head. We don't know why this happened. We got to run a lot more tests. You're going to be here a while, because this blood's got to get absorbed through the body.
Yeah.
And we got to make sure this doesn't happen again. Well, to date, I was in the hospital 10 days, 8 in ICU, 2 in a regular room before I was able to get released. Took about a month to recover, was fine. They don't really know what happened and why the aneurysm didn't show up again, and why the bleeding wasn't there, but I know, because I heard
The prayer.
what Chris prayed for.
Yeah.
Right?
Prayer works.
Right. Prayer works. So that's the second tragedy that almost takes me out.
Wow.
Yeah.
Huh. Man, I kind of need a sip of water after that one. That hits real close to home, because I've had a couple relatives that have had aneurysms.
Yeah.
And at least 3. 2 of them, they've had speech issues. It's basically almost like the same result as the aftermath of a stroke.
Yes.
And one didn't make it. One close friend of the family didn't make it. Years ago, she died of an aneurysm, and here you explaining how in real time your pastor prays to stop the bleeding and didn't know where the bleeding.
Yeah.
That's I understand it, and anybody who has a spiritual sense will understand what's going on. But we have one more tragedy, and I promise you we're gonna end up on the mountaintop. We have one more to go through, because it's kind of like this show is kind of like a bow and arrow. You have that, you got to pull way back, and the further back you pull, the further the arrow is gonna go. So let's pull back just a little bit further, and let's get to that next one.
I tell people all the time is it's one thing thinking that you're going to die. It's another thing thinking the person you love is going to die. Wow. And, and that kind of, because at the end of the day, like if I would have died, I wouldn't even know I was dead.
Right.
Right? In human thoughts.
Right. From this side, yeah.
Right. I don't have to be the survivor.
Right.
Of the tragedy.
You don't have to live with it.
I don't have to live with it. I don't have to figure out how to deal with it because I've died. Yeah. Right? So we get May 2nd, that happens. It takes 10 days in the hospital, a month to recover. Keep in mind, I'm not involved in my business at all at this point. My wife and I go on vacation. We take out a 3-week vacation. We travel. We have a good time. And I'm still kind of in a recovery mode, but I'm really, really close. We come back, and she says to me, just out of the blue, she says, I had this little bump right here on my arm and one right here, and I want to go get them checked out. And I'm like, okay, like, yeah, great. Like, let's do that. So she goes get them checked out. They send her to do a little scan, and they said, we think it's like some fatty tissue maybe in them 2 bumps, but we'd like to look at it a little further. And she says, look, while we're doing the scan, can you drop the scan down a little lower? I'm having some stomach issues, and I think maybe it possibly could be gallbladder. Again, she's a retired nurse, so she's doing a self-evaluation.
Diagnosis.
So they do. They come back and said, we're seeing something in your liver. Not sure what it is. So they want to look a little further. Well, once it's a tumor or whatever, now you go on to Marybird Perkins, they getting involved. Well, long story short, October 2nd, she's diagnosed with cancer.
Wow.
Now, I just finished with the brain bleed I had on May 2nd. And October 2nd, she's diagnosed with cancer.
Wow.
The tumor in her liver is 14 centimeters already.
Wow.
It's melanoma. There's a couple small spots other places. But what most people don't know about the story is that she already is a 12-year survivor of iris melanoma that she had in her eye, and they had to remove her eye. This is before I ever knew her.
Wow.
So once again, we're in Ponchatoula. It's ironic we're talking about this here in Ponchatoula because right across the street at the restaurant was where our first date was. She was from Poplarville, Mississippi. We met online. We talked for about 2 weeks, and we met right here across from the alligator pit on the other side of the tracks, and we walked right here to the restaurant across the street for our first date. And we sit down, and I say to her on the phone, because you don't never really know what you're getting when it's online, right?
Right.
But we've been talking for a couple of weeks, and I really like her. I'm really into her. And I said, like, I hope when I see you, like, I like you because I want to like you. Well, when I did, I was like, okay, like, this is good. This is good. So we sit down to eat, and I got her some flowers and stuff delivered there. And as we're talking, she says early on in the conversation, I got something to tell you. And I'm thinking, oh my God, I've just been through a death. I've been through a divorce. Now, this is before the brain bleed, right?
Right.
And I'm like, what can she have to tell me? And she says, you've been making comments about my beautiful blue eyes online and on the phone, and I need to tell you something. And I said, okay. She goes, this eye is a prosthetic. I had iris melanoma.
Wow.
Which is cancer. And I was like, I would have never known. And she goes, is that a deal breaker?
Wow.
And I said, no, it's not a deal breaker unless you fixing to tell me that you still have this cancer, because I can't carry somebody else's cross again.
Right.
I just can't do it.
Right.
Like, I'm not prepped. I'm not ready to do that again. Yeah. And she said, no. It's been going for 8 or 9 years. I don't even have to go get scans anymore. I'm completely clear. I was fortunate. They got it all. I did everything I was supposed to do. And I was like, great. then I'm in.
Mm-hmm.
But why did you choose to tell me that on the first date? Like, I'm like, that's really strong. Like, I don't know if I would acknowledge that on the first date. Like, I would probably like let you like me a little bit more, right?
Maybe not even the first month.
Yeah, and she kind of just said, well, you know, I really like you, and I didn't want to hide this and have to talk about it down the line. So anyway, fast forward now, we're back, you know, to August 2nd, August 3rd, and we got to deal with the diagnosis. You know, fortunate for me, I already created time and money through my business. So money was never a factor in her treatment. We went to the best of the best. We started at in Baton Rouge at Mary Beth Perkins. We went to MD Anderson. Money was never an issue with that. But more importantly than the money, I was able to spend all the time with her because I didn't have to go to a job. And my business wasn't dragging me back in it because I formed structure in my business and my people were handling it.
Well, can we put a pin right there?
Yeah.
You said something that's very, very potent. I really just wanted to kind of draw that out a little bit. I want to unpack that a little bit. You said you had built your business to what? Like, how did you build your business?
I built my business to the point that it had structure.
And so that means that even if you're not able to be a part of the business, because like years ago I read that from the SBA, the Small Business Association, they put out a statistic that said that more than 50% of businesses fail within the first 5 years.
Yeah.
And the reason that those businesses fail is not because the business owner doesn't have the skill to do the work, but the business side of it. You know, basically, if they don't work, they don't eat.
Yeah.
You know, if they have to, you know, and so many people who are trying to be entrepreneurs, they burn out because if they're not there, you know, on that hamster wheel, keeping everything running, they're not making money. But I think that's important. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. You know, so exactly what you're talking about the percentages and all that fail within the first year, within 5 years, within 10 years. And there's all kind of people that have all kind of reasons why, right? But I simply say the reason so many small businesses fail is because they stay small for too long, right? They don't put any structure in place. They don't get their self removed from the business. So when bad things start to happen, you know, like for instance, any of the tragedies that I had, you know, but you know, go back really the last 3, because of the divorce, I'm gonna just tell you, it knocked me out. It knocked me out emotionally and mentally. Fortunately, my son was my partner at the time. He's running the business. My daughter's the VP, and they took it over because I didn't want to do it no more, nor was I capable of doing it no more emotionally and mentally. And that lasted probably a month or so before I was able to pick myself back up and get back in it, right? You know, and so then, you know, the brain bleed happens.
And it's another.
I'm out of business if I don't have the structure.
Right.
You know, it's 10 days plus another month. I mean, I could have probably got back in the office after the 10 days. It'd have been hard, but I could have probably got back in. I could have been on the phone, but I had to do none of that. I was able to just to recover. And then here comes the diagnosis with Linda.
Wow.
You know, and I was out of the office from May 2nd until December 31st.
Wow.
Not doing anything with the business. No one really asking me any questions. They just took it and ran with it. You know, she got diagnosed on August 2nd. She passed away on October 13th. And basically I gave myself till the end of the year. And then I kind of said, what are you going to do? Like not laying in bed, moping and mourning, but just time to be able to reflect, because look, the 3.5 months from the time she was diagnosed to the time she passed was emotionally, mentally draining.
Right.
Physically to some point. Fortunately, her daughter came over and stayed with me and we did it together, but I don't think I could have done it alone.
Right.
But I gave myself till the end of the year to like just really say, okay, like, let's go.
Yeah. I remember and not just building the infrastructure for the business, but you talked about how after the first time family came together, you and your kids, y'all came together, building that infrastructure for your family, because families are so important, especially in the times of tragedy. I hear a lot of times people make these comments about, oh, we only come together for funerals and that kind of stuff. But if you can't lean on your family during that time, you don't. It sometimes it's best that families only get together for funerals,
Right.
because that there's a genuine time when everyone is facing that existential crisis of, and facing that mortality question about, hey, how much longer do I have? Hey, I watched my mom over the course of my mom died back in 2020. And when COVID started, she was going through a bunch of amputations because of complications from diabetes. She went to a nail salon to get her toes done, and lady's hand slipped and cut her foot, and she just had amputation after amputation after that infection. They could never get a hold of it, and finally she passed in June of 2020. But from the time that happened, when she had to stay with my aunt, her sister, my aunt, and just to see what a grueling process that was, watching her having to take care of her baby sister, because my mom was her younger sister. There's a third sister that's younger than the two of them. But when you talk about how physically and emotionally draining it was, just bringing my mom to dialysis, I would bring her to dialysis and, sometimes take off from work, and working in education, having those summers off, was a relief for me, that I didn't have to exhaust all of my days. And I did have the time during the summer, but just to see how my aunt would toil and just have to dealing with someone who is, being a caretaker for someone. And a lot of times we don't really understand how we see the person going through it, but the caretakers and how much it costs them emotionally, mentally, physically, to actually, number one, see their loved one go through this up close and personal, and number two, have that same weight on your shoulders while you're dealing with your own personal issues.
Right.
is another thing, and so, just the respect that I have for people who are caretakers, who are going through that and having to deal with the loved one, a loved one with that long-term illness is very key.
I remember Linda saying to me real early on in the diagnosis, like within a couple weeks, saying to me, laying in bed one night, she said, and I found this just to be really odd. She said, if you want me to go home and deal with this on my own, I will. And I kind of looked at her like, what are you talking about? And I said, what are you talking about? And she said, this is not going to be pretty. And you didn't sign up for this. And I will go deal with this. That's the type of person she was. She was trying to spare me the pain, right? And, obviously, my response was, you're right. I didn't sign up for this, but I signed up for you. And this is part of the journey that we on together. And we're going to do this step by step together, one day at a time, and we're going to see where this ends up. Well, she passed away on October 13th, but I learned so much from her about faith through this process, because I need to tell you, the way she handled it for me, like, I always felt like she was protecting me, and I'm trying to protect her, like, from maybe what the doctor might say. And I think she's not asking the questions because she doesn't want the doctor to say it in front of me.
Right.
But she's come to terms with it already.
Right.
Right. And we're trying to protect each other along the way, but her faith was really stepped out. When I really noticed how extremely different it was, we were in the hospital. It was about 5 days before she passed. She came home on hospice for a day or two and then passed. The doctor came in and started telling us different things and asked her if she signed the DNR. And she said no. And he said, well, I think you maybe need to because you're going to be going home. And if you come back, we're still not going to be able to do anything for you. Like, you understand, like, this is terminal. We're not going to be able to do nothing. And like, I want to kind of choke the doctor out at this point, right? Like that's kind of where I am.
Yeah.
And she's got me by the arm, squeezing my arm because I'm on a bedside because she knows where I am.
You growling inside.
Right. And and she after she says Carey G, which means, okay, like, it's time, calm down. She looks at the doctor and she says, Doc, with all due respect, what you need to understand is I quit counting on you saving me a long time ago.
Wow.
She said, I'm counting on my God to save me. And I went, like, who says that? Like, who says that at this moment?
Yes.
And so the doctor talks about some other things and he circles back to the DNR. And she says again, she says, Doc, I know you've done everything you can do. And I appreciate it. But I quit counting on you a long time ago.
Wow.
If I'm going to be saved, God's going to save me. And if I'm not, this is what he meant to be.
Wow.
And I'm going, like, who is this person? Like, it's just hard for me today still to fathom. My faith has grown, but I don't know if I'm there, right?
Right.
And so they leave the room. Her daughter's in the room and a couple other people. Eventually, people kind of mingle out, and it's her and I. Her daughter had gone down to get something to eat. And I'm sitting next to her bed. And for the first time in the 3 months, I started crying. And she says to me, she puts her arms around me and says, it's going to be okay. And I'm thinking, no, like, it's not going to be okay. And she says, nothing grows on the mountaintop. This is what she comes up with at this moment.
Wow.
Nothing grows on the mountaintop. Everything grows in a valley.
Oh, wow.
Where all the nutrients and water falls.
Wow.
Well, I got no idea, like, why she's telling me this stuff. But when I look back on it, I think she knew where I was fixing to be again, which was way down in that valley.
Coach, that's heavy.
So we bring her home. Ultimately, 3 days later, she passes away. But I've never felt that she has been real far away. Like, the thing that I feared the most was not necessarily her death, but the thing I feared the most was the loneliness that I felt through the divorce. Like, the not wanting to be at home between the 6 o'clock and the 9 o'clock hour when everybody else was gone, and now I had all this time before it was time to go to bed, right?
Right.
But I've never felt that way since her death. I always felt like she's been pretty nearby, making sure I'm okay. So it's been really different. Like, there's this peace about it.
Yeah. Wow. That's wow. It's just so much to unpack. I'm blown away by the wisdom that she had during her final moments.
Yes.
That thing, my thing is, I want to be on the mountaintop. Everybody want to be on the mountaintop. But if you want to eat, you got to go in the valley.
Right.
Nothing grows on, and that makes so much sense. Like, you know, there was I did a mission trip one time, and they talked about the snake line. You ever heard about the snake line?
I don't think so.
There's a certain altitude where there are no snakes because they can't survive or breathe at that altitude. So after you get to a certain height, there are no snakes there. But not only are there snakes there, according to what Linda says, is there's nothing that can grow up there.
Yeah.
You know? And when you think about the mountaintops, it's all snow caps up there.
Yeah, and all the valleys, all where the green grass,
All the green grass, the melt, everything, the sediment, everything just runs downhill. So, you know, I'm developing an appreciation now for the valley. I don't want to stay there, but I know I gotta go there.
You know, and I guess her death takes us to where I am now, right?
Yes.
You know, and so the day before we got released to go home, I called Chris and I said, we're nearing the end. Would you come by and pray with us, right? And he did. But before he went up to the room, I caught him outside because me and him had to have a talk because he had a direct line to God. Mine's fuzzy. And I needed to know where we were going with this, right? And so he comes up, gives me a hug, sits down, and I said, I got a question for you. And he says, you want to know what now? And I said, yeah. I said, because last time I was in this position, you told me God had somebody better for me. And you're not going to be able to tell me this time. Because, like, there ain't nobody better than her.
Come on.
And so he says, I knew you were going to ask that question. And I've been thinking the whole way here how I was going to answer it. And he said, I need to tell you, I don't have an answer for you today. He says, but what I will tell you is this. God got something really big in store for you. I don't know what it is, but it's going to be something big. Well, out of Linda's death, the Carey G movement got life.
Carey G.
It was something that we kind of started together. She's the only person who ever called me Carey G. G was my middle name. Nobody ever used my middle name or my initial. And I used to get Carey G started out as a good thing for Linda to call me. It was like things like, Carey G, I love you. Carey G, you're amazing. Carey G, where have you been my whole life, right? Well, then it turned into Carey G, that's a lie. When I would joke with her, Carey G, that's enough, which I got a couple times in the hospital. And then when I really was about to step across the line, it was, Carey G, I'm going to stab you in the neck with a fork, right? So we joked about that in her eulogy and all, about that she had like an altered personality with that Carey G thing and all. But the Carey G movement, the book, the podcast, the Straight Talk with Coach Carey G, the classes that we just did, all of that came from her death.
Wow.
Now, would I give it all back for her? Yes.
Absolutely.
Okay. But what lots of people don't know is not only did that come out of her death, I was able to meet another beautiful woman that I'm dating now. Been dating for about a year. And I don't compare her to Linda. Like, she's her own person, right? She loves me in her own way. I love her in my own way. My love for her is not the love I have for Linda or the love that I had for Suzette or the love I have for Cindy. It's just a love that we have for each other. Yeah. And it doesn't have to be the same.
No.
And it doesn't have to be comparable, right? It's what...
It stands alone.
It stands alone.
Yeah.
And so God has blessed me. And people go, oh, wait a second. If all that's a blessing, we don't want none of them blessings.
No.
Right? We don't want none of that.
I've dodged the book of Job for years.
Right.
You know, because of all of the loss that he suffered. You know, but at the end of the story, there was triumph.
Yeah, and look, and I don't know if this is where the story ends, right?
Right.
Because I'm not even the captain of the ship,
Right.
right? I'm just kind of steering the boat whichever way the wind takes me.
Mm-hmm.
But what I do know is I had to get back up again.
Mm-hmm.
Linda would have it no other way. Like
Mm-hmm.
if her death crushed me, if her dying and going to be with God, if I allowed that to crush me, then we've gotten all the wrong concepts out of death and the afterlife, right?
Yes.
Right. Now,
And faith.
And faith. And, I tell people all the time that I'm working hard to get where Linda is so I can see her again. Because if Linda ain't up there, I ain't got no chance. There ain't no hope for me. Like,
Yeah.
So, that's my day-to-day journey.
Mm-hmm.
But look, I've had people join the journey. I got people in the Carey G movement, people helping, people that believe in the story, that believe in the inspiration that it gives other people,
Mm-hmm.
right? And my girlfriend's gotten on board with it. We're talking through different things, and like she's given me time to get through the grief.
Yeah.
She was a hospice nurse for a long time, so she understands death. And she let me take it at my own pace, let me be who I had to be in each moment of it until I got to the other side of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's the Jenny King franchise, which you built, and that got you through a lot of the tragedies in the beginning, the two deaths, the divorce, the brain bleed.
Yeah.
So that was the Jenny King franchise. Your family, you had that going. Now, after Linda's death, you started the Carey G Foundation.
Right.
Can we talk about
Yeah,
Carey G and the Ourso University?
Yeah. So Coach Carey G, like I said, came alive with Linda's death. The Coach Carey G is a movement. We have Ourso University that spins off of that, where I spend time teaching other entrepreneurs how to build a self-managing business, how to put structure in place so that they can create time and money for whatever they choose to use it for. And then off of that, Linda had started a foundation that we were going to put money in when Ourso University kicked off. We were going to give 10% of whatever we brought in to her foundation, and her foundation was we named it That's the Execs. It was that we're gonna raise enough money to buy a veteran, a Janet King franchise, put them in business for themselves, and we're gonna mentor that franchise owner to success in that business.
Okay.
She had a big heart for veterans because all of her brothers were military, and so was her grandfather and people before them. So we started that together, and we're still raising money today for that foundation.
So you've had a few fundraisers where you've been able to go to a golf tournament, a car show.
Right.
Like, talk to us about like the different fundraising opportunities you've had and what you would like to see happen as far as raising funds going up.
Yeah.
This is a part of Paulse, positive action, uplifting lives, sparking excellence.
It's another part of serving, part of the mission of serving and giving back. We started out like with a football pool, really small. We raised a couple hundred, and then we went ahead and we went to a car show and did a 50-50. And we're like, it's crazy how many people are willing to give to veterans, right?
Mm-hmm.
And got on board with our cause. People have given online. We got That's the Exec Facebook page with a QR code that you can donate at. And it seems like every event we go to, we pick up a little bit momentum. Like we grabbed the car show from another event that was a Thibodeau High baseball event, and we just said, hey, we want to come out and sell 50-50 raffles. And then we ran into a car show guy that has put us in touch with one we've already done with two others. Mm-hmm. And we just recently did a poker run at a golf tournament. Mm-hmm. And now out of that golf tournament, we ran into another guy who has a foundation. I think it's WPA or something it's called, and they actually raise money for people who have a good cause, and they've invited us in, and we're going to be one of the people that they give one of their golf tournaments funds to, mm-hmm. for us to put towards That's the Execs. Mm-hmm. So every time we go do something, there's someone else there that God puts in front of us that can help the movement. So that's the exec thing. The coach. Yeah.
You also have something coming up with NASCAR?
Yeah, so that's we're going to something at Talladega.
Okay.
And it's another big car show that the same individual we ran into puts on, and there's going to be thousands and thousands of people there, and he's going to allow us to go there. It's his event, do a 50-50, and we're going to give half of the money to the Vets Exec Foundation. And he said, hey, I don't want anything. It's a good cause. Y'all just come and do it.
Wow.
So that's coming up in May. So it seems like everywhere we go, God drops somebody else in that we can take it to a different level.
I think, positive actions that uplift lives and spark excellence draws those types of opportunities. And that's what we want to highlight in our podcast. When people are doing things like you have the veterans where you're raising money to give them a franchise and teach them how to run the franchise. Like, that is the epitome of what Paulse is. Let's talk a little bit about Ourso University, just a little bit more. Let's say we have a baseball team called the Entrepreneurs, and you coach Carey G. You putting your baseball players out on the field, and each baseball player represents a component of Ourso University or something that that's necessary for us to win. So who's on first and what's on second?
Yeah, so the three pillars of Ourso Enterprise, which is my janitorial company, the three pillars we've moved that into Ourso University, and those three pillars are serve others, duplicate yourself, and multiply your business.
Okay.
And we believe it all starts with serving others, from your employees to your team to your community and into your customers. Like, one of those is not just good enough. You can't just serve customers and think that you can build this thing really big. It's about serving others along the way. In the Bible it talks about Jesus washing people's feet. Well, it talks about he took the job of the lowest servant, and if he can wash their feet, what else can we do, right? And so it's a complete serve mentality, and it's really ironic because one of the chapters in the book is called "The Lady with the Suitcase," and it's a story about me being in Nashville, Tennessee, with my wife, with my second wife, for my birthday, and us coming across a bunch of homeless people, and something tugging on my heart to do something for them. And we go out and have this expensive dinner, and I got to walk back down the street and see these homeless people, and I know something's wrong with this picture. And the last day we were there, I grab $100. The story's a lot more detailed in the book, but I grab $100 out the ATM, and I go out and I give a 20 to the homeless person, and a couple others show up, and I give the 20s out, and here comes an old lady with a suitcase pulling it across the street, and she gets the last 20, and when I hand it to her, she says something very unusual to me. She says, "Can I pray for you?" Well, at the time where I was in my faith, that made me uncomfortable. Right? But the other thing I thought was, why is she going to pray for me? I should be praying for her.
Wow.
So here we are. We're having this kumbaya moment in the middle of the street in Nashville, holding hands.
Yeah.
Me and 5 homeless people, right?
Yeah.
But it was what she said in her prayer. That is another thing that I know God dropped in to convince Carey he was real. And she prayed, and I'll never forget this because I prayed this prayer at my first Ourso University class the other day with the people in it. That's how I started it. I prayed the same prayer for them that she prayed for me because I knew where it got me. She said, "I don't know who this man is or what business he owns." Right away I thought, wow, how does she know I own a business? Who told you that, right? She says, "But my prayer for him is that one day, whatever his business is, it becomes the biggest in the world."
Wow.
So, kumbaya moment. Good luck. Great knowing you guys. And I leave. And 9 months later, I'm on the Jana King Mountain, which is the mountain that they got it on the upstairs of this building. Tom Inman from Ponchatoula. It's crazy all this is in Ponchatoula.
Yeah.
He invites me up to the top of this mountain. I happen to be there. We go up. He's got some other people. He taps his glass and he says, I know all y'all know each other, but I need to introduce Carey and his wife. He says, this is Carey Ourso, and he's the largest franchise owner on the Gulf Coast. But I recently found out that he's the largest franchise in the world now. And I went, the world? And he goes, yeah, the world. Immediately my mind went back to the lady with the suitcase, because I wasn't trying to do that. I never even thought about being the biggest franchise in the world until the lady said it, and I never thought about it again.
Right.
I can't wait to get home to go talk to my pastor about it. I said she had to know somebody. And he goes, it wasn't who she knew, it's who she was. And I said, no, you don't understand. She was a lady with a suitcase. My ignorance to the scripture, right? And he goes, no. And he goes on to talk about the scripture that talks about, if you feed the hungry, you shelter the homeless, you give to the poor.
Whatever you've done to the least of these, you've done it unto me.
You've done it to me.
Yeah.
And I thought, and he said, because you were obedient to that tugging, this is what happened. So there's God popping up again for me. So like for me, I don't understand how people don't believe.
And you so many times we hear, oh, they give them money to the preacher and that kind of stuff like that. But you were just trying to uplift the life, and just to give a $20 bill to someone who then asked to pray for you, and you end up with the largest Janet King franchise in the world.
And look, I don't deserve none of that, right? I don't want people to ever feel like, well, he thinks he's mightier than I, and he got this connection with God, and I bet if I dig into his life, I find some stuff. Like, I know I'm not perfect, right? I know that I've been very fortunate. Mm-hmm. And people say, I don't want to be fortunate if this is what fortunate looks like.
Right.
Right. But I tell people all the time, you don't have to go through all this that I went through to build the business the way I built it.
Right.
You can do it without all the tragedy in your life. You don't necessarily have to go through all this to get to the point of your faith that I am. Maybe I just was hard-headed and God knew.
I heard a preacher say one time that, he made the analogy that if you want, the taller the building that you build, the deeper the foundation has to be to hold it up. And to think about all of the things that tried to bury you, all of the things that came, how life be life, and sometimes, things just happens. And what would have been tragic is if, like you said, Linda would not have wanted you to be destroyed by her passing. She would want you to be resilient. She would want you to get up. She would want you to move on, go on with your life. And, that's, the Bible says, and I don't want to get preachy, but, God says in his word that he wishes above all that you prosper and be in health, even as your soul prosper. Yeah. So even he wants us to be prosperous. Yeah. And, just to see how he sent people to a man who, by his own admission, says his faith wasn't really there.
Yeah.
He wasn't comfortable even with being prayed for in that manner, but was submissive to, hey, I'll join hands with this person. And it also brings up this scripture that says, be careful how you entertain strangers, because you may be entertaining an angel unawares.
Yeah, and I think that's probably what happened. Like this is one of our shirts, Pray Big Prayers, with the G logo from the Carey G.
Yeah.
And this is something I wouldn't have wore 3 or 4 years ago.
Yeah.
Worry about what people would think, what people would say, but we have a saying in our business, and I have a saying in Carey G and Ourso U, is that we pray big prayers because we believe we got a big God.
Right.
And we have a big God who's capable of big things, and we believe we deserve big things. And so I'm just not going to pray for little bitty things, right? I've seen God do just such big things in my life, like stopping the bleeding when somebody prayed for it, creating this Jana King franchise when somebody prayed for it, right? Like I see all that stuff happen, and I think I'm never going to be a preacher. Like I don't know the scripture like you do or like Chris does. I'm learning more about it. I'm on this journey to read the 1 year Bible. And because I got to do it the Carey G way, my goal is to read it in 6 months because I don't know if I last a year.
Yeah.
Like it's 5,000 something pages.
Yeah.
You know, like, so I'm like, okay, this is going to be hard for me to make a commitment to the year. I'm going to do it in 6 months. And I've just turned the page last night into October of the 1 year Bible. And I started it October 15th.
Come on.
So I'm on track. But again, like it's given me so much wisdom. Like I've seen so much. I've survived so much, you know, and I tell, you know, people all the time, because someone said this to me, like I was hesitant about putting this on a shirt because of how people would judge me and how I felt like maybe I needed to be perfect to be able to put this on my shirt. And someone said to me when I said that to them before we had this shirt, they said, God doesn't call the qualified. He qualifies the call.
Yep.
And I went, I print the shirt because I think he's called me.
Well, and I think a shirt like that, his shirt says "Pray Big Prayers," is really a clarion call and a reminder to us because the Bible says to pray without ceasing. Yeah. And if we're going to pray and ask God for anything, we ask in faith, nothing wavering. If we don't ask in faith, then what we praying for?
You know, I said to the group on Friday about pray big prayers because I always end, you know, some of the stuff that I do live with a couple of things, and one of it's pray big prayers. And I said to them, let's listen, like if we believe we have a big God, why would we insult him by praying for little bitty things?
Yeah.
Like if Dick Saban was in the room and you could ask him one question, you wouldn't ask him how to block the trap play.
No.
Like you're going to get really deep into philosophy.
Yeah.
With him, right? Of
how did you build what
how
you
did
built?
You do that?
Yeah.
That's going to be the question.
Yeah.
It's going to be a big question.
Yeah.
Well, if I'm going to ask that kind of question next day, I ain't going to pray a little bit of prayer to God. Right. And I'm an impatient person by nature. And what I believe is if I pray for little bitty things, I might be waiting a whole long time. Yeah. But if I pray for that big thing, God might be dropping some little things along the way. You know, and that keeps me going. You know, so yeah, you know, it's been a journey. The book has been such a healing process for me.
Yeah.
You know?
And sometimes, you know, we got to be careful and I like what you're saying. The answer may not come the way we think it should come. We may ask God for a tree, but he'll give us a basket of apples, right, which has millions of trees in it. Right. If we do the right thing with what he's giving us, right, he can give us one apple and we get a whole orchard out of it. Right. You know, we have to, you know, pray big prayers, but also faith without works. Yeah. We gotta plant that seed. We gotta nurture it. We gotta water it so that it can grow.
I tell people all the time, you know, you can't pray for a hole to be dug and lean on a shovel.
No.
You got to start digging.
You got to dig.
You got to start digging. And you got to hope that somebody see you trying to dig this big hole with one shovel and they show up with a shovel.
Look.
And then they get 3 friends with a shovel. And then ultimately a guy goes down the road and he got an excavator and he sees about 6 idiots trying to dig this pond with shovels. And he stops and goes, I got an excavator. Let me come and help. That's what prayer is about.
Let me tell you, that literally happened to me. I was trying to change out do some work in my backyard and dig out some dirt to expand my patio in the backyard on the back porch. And I had a little tiller and the ground was really, really hard. And my neighbor down the street had a tractor and he came with a box on the back of his tractor. And what it took me 8 hours to do, that man came and did in 2. And so I was literally scratching the surface with that little tiller.
Right, but if he wouldn't have saw you out there with the tiller, he'd have never showed up with the
I
tractor.
would have showed up with the tractor.
Yeah.
And listen, that I think that, praying big prayers is something, is a message that we need to get out. We need to pray more. We need to pray more for each other. We need to pray more when we're going through, and we need to pray more when we see others going through.
Yeah, and it's hard. It's hard to pray for somebody that hurt you.
Yeah.
But man, like when you finally can forgive them,
Yeah.
and then you can pray for them,
Yeah.
it's a game changer.
Well, Matthew 5, Jesus said, "Pray for those that despitefully use you."
And it's hard, man. Like
Yeah.
I'm not making it sound like anybody special, because it took me a long time
Right.
to be able to get there.
Right.
But through my pastor, through my therapist, emotionally I grew, spiritually I grew, and look, this life's a journey, and it's about constantly getting better.
Mm-hmm.
But I just know for me that knowing that somebody else really got this ship,
Yeah.
makes things easier on me.
So let's kind of shift it a little bit. We're gonna be wrapping it up in a little bit. So I want to really, in every one of the podcasts that we're doing, we want to kind of like speak directly to the young people. So to a young leader, matter of fact, today I was observing a class, and I heard these kids talking in their group, and this kid says, yeah, one of my friends is he's almost a millionaire. And he wasn't talking to me. I was just sitting in the class, and I said, "Your kid's almost a millionaire." I said, "Where does he go to school?" He said, "He goes to school here." A kid in the school where I am, who's almost a millionaire, he's an entrepreneur, and he does day trading. And just to see that there are young people out there who are actually doing big things, dreaming big dreams. And I often say that, kids don't know that it's hard until some older person tell them that it is. They don't know that, I say a lot of times too, that I don't know when I'm supposed to be scared. I don't know that I'm supposed to, so maybe I'm crazy, or, I don't know if I'm supposed to be sitting here talking to the largest Janet King franchise in the world on the podcast, but I am.
Yeah.
And but just to talk to the young people about, dreaming big dreams, praying big prayers, and just give them a little bit of advice.
So what I would say, if there's a group of young kids sitting out here, the three things that I started out my Ourso U with, the first slide said, pray big prayers, dream big dreams, and go big or go home.
Yeah.
And just so I would say, like, everybody, like, whatever you're gonna do, it's gonna be way bigger than you. You're not gonna be able to control everything. Like, pray big prayers, get God in your life, find your faith, get in a youth group, get in the right church that has things going on with the youth, and start building that faith from a young person, so that you don't have to try to do that in the middle of a tragedy like I had to do with my divorce. I had to build my faith in the middle of a tragedy, and that's hard to do. But if you got it built already, the tragedy is easier to survive, like I was able to survive Linda's death because my faith was already built.
Yeah.
The foundation was there. So I would say pray big prayers and start there. Dream big dreams, just like a little bitty kid does. Little bitty kids got all these fascinating ideas of who they're going to be and what they're going to be when they grow up. And then as we start to grow up, life beats us up. And we minimize those dreams, and we start getting into that settle for mentality. Right? This is all I'm worth. This is what I was meant to be. Those guys are lucky because they're making more money. They got better things going on, and we attribute it to luck when it really wasn't luck. It was hard work. It was some bad times that they went through. But if you don't dream big, you got no chance. I always say you need to become a delusional dreamer. And people will say, well, what's that? And I said, well, I got the term from Jelly Roll, because Jelly Roll,
the singer.
Jelly Roll the singer.
Yeah.
Jelly Roll said that when he was in prison, that he was dreaming of becoming a country singer on a big stage in front of big audiences. He didn't even know how he was getting out of jail. Well, that's a delusional dream, right?
Yeah.
You in jail, you don't know how you're getting out, but you're going to do what he's doing now.
Right.
But if he wouldn't have had that dream, he probably is going to be stuck in jail.
Right.
So become not just a dreamer, become a delusional dreamer. And that's a dream that probably the only two people going to believe is yourself and me, because I told you to do that, right? So you have all these naysayers trying to knock you off that dream. That's how big the dream has to be, because if the dream's that big, when things get hard, you'll try to get through them.
Yeah.
If the dream is small, like I just want a new car, right? Well, when it gets really tough, you're going to say, this car is good because it still takes me to and from my job. Why would I need a more expensive one? Why would I need a bigger one, right?
Yeah.
But man, if that dream's big, if it's delusional, it doesn't let you quit. Like this Carey G movement's hard, man. This is easy. Convincing people they need Jesus, convincing people they need structure in their business, convincing people to get on board with Vets to Exec because serving others gets you somewhere, that's hard.
Yeah.
But my delusional dream for the Carey G movement is to one day speak in front of arenas full of a paid audience. And they got to be paid. They got to be paying, because in order to do what Scripture wants us to do and give back and bring people along that journey, there got to be some funds to do that.
You're saying that, but when I was doing belief therapy, I was as a pastor, we did Christian counseling, belief therapy, and one of the tenets of it was that it had to be a paid service, and the reason is the people who come to that belief therapy have to invest. They have to have skin in the game, because now you've put a value into, and an expectation comes along with that value. So if you were to give these entrepreneurial classes that you're giving for free, people probably will show up because it's no value.
There's no value to it.
There's no exclusivity to it, But once there is a value assigned, and they do show up and they pay for it, because if I pay for something, I'm going to expect to get top notch.
And then I'm going to execute it.
And I'm going to go and execute it. I'm going to believe it because I paid for it.
Yeah. So
I think that's key. That it's not something that we're just saying, we're going to hand out for free, because it does have a value, and it has a lasting value to it.
Pray big prayers, dream big dreams. And then my last message to them would be simply go big or go home. And, people kind of get confused about that. Does that mean spend this ridiculous amount of money, buy this business, take all these chances? It's not what it means. It simply means whatever you're going to do, whatever you choose to do, go big. I always said, I'm going to respect the guy riding on the back of a garbage truck as long as he wants to be the best garbage truck rider there is. I'm a glorified janitor. I told Linda, and I told my new girlfriend, I'm going to find out how much either one of y'all love me when you introduce me to your family, as this is my boyfriend, Carey, he's a janitor. If you say this is my boyfriend, Carey, he's an entrepreneur, he owns his own business, you still got doubts about us. But when you say, this is Carey, he's a janitor, I know you really love me. So we joke about that. But so it's go big in whatever you're going to do. I don't care what it is, but don't do it small. Don't pray small prayers. Don't dream little dreams. And don't do anything small, because we don't give other people motivation by being small.
Right.
We shine light on other people by being big, and that they see us that we're big. And then they start believing, if he can do it, if that guy from Gramercy, Louisiana, that guy from Luxor, Louisiana, can sit on a couch together in Ponchatoula and have these conversations and accomplish what they've accomplished with a nickel state degree.
Both of us.
Go
Colonels.
I probably got you, because mine's in general studies. I know you got to have a higher one than that.
Right? I got two.
He got two. I got one as general studies. But if two guys from the river parishes who went to Nicholls State University can have this conversation and talk about God, about praying big prayers, about dreaming big dreams, and about going big in life or go home, then everybody believes they can do it.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And that's what it's about. You don't gain anything by playing small. I tell people all the time, if you're in a room and all you're doing is being confident and positive, and your presence makes people believe you're arrogant, get out of that room.
Yeah.
Because winners don't mistake confidence for arrogance. They see confidence as confidence.
That's it. That's it. Man, this has been such a fruitful conversation. Coach Carey G, Victory Shadow. Go and get the book. Where can they get the book?
You can get it on Amazon. It's only online, but you can get it at any major bookstore online. But you can go to Amazon and type in Carey Ourso or Carey G Ourso or Victory Shadow, and it pops up.
Hey, go and get the book. It's a page turner. I'm still working on it, and I'm getting past Miss Linda's chapter because it's kind of, it touches the heart.
Yeah. It's an emotional chapter.
But what touches the heart, what leaves the heart touches the heart. And so your heart touched my heart, sharing your story. And I just want to thank you for coming on the Paulse Podcast. I pray that, a big prayer that your vets to exec endeavors and Ourso University, that people will begin to, inquire more about it. If anyone wants to, attend one of your courses, they can check it out at where?
Yeah, just go online to CoachCareyG.com.
Okay.
And we just finished with one. We'll be posting another one soon. But you can get all the information, whether or not if you want me to come do some speaking to a group, just some motivational speakers, some inspirational speaking. You can go to CoachCareyG.com, click on that link, and you'll find a page on there that will lead you to a spot that you can request us and get some pricing and get some information.
And they also can get to the vets to exec.
Yes.
So if I'm a veteran and I want to qualify,
yes.
How do I get involved?
So if you're a veteran that wants to qualify to be that person that we would select, go to CoachCareyG.com, click on the Community Vets to Exec link, and on that page it tells you all about the foundation, and there's a box on there that you can click to apply and get more information.
Coach Carey G.
Yes.
Thank you so much for joining us today. We just pray that everything goes great. Go big or go home.
Pray big prayers, dream big dreams, and go big or go home. Thank you so much. I appreciate you.
This is the Paulse Podcast, positive actions, uplifting lives, sparking excellence. We'll see you next time on the Paulse Podcast. God bless you.